And welcome to Breaking the Silence and a live stream. I haven't done it for a while. We did not have a conversation finished to share with you this Friday, so Mary suggested that we have a live stream. And what I wanted to do was talk about a lot of different things. So much has been coming up, so many synchronicities, including Day of Disclosure. And you know how I feel about that film based on the first trailer. Didn't look good to me at all, not in the slightest way. But now there's a second trailer. And something happened during that trailer that was different than the first trailer that really caught my attention. I was just looking at my phone because someone's trying to reach me that's important to the show. What was said in it was someone that looked like they were a podcaster. And while he was talking, there was black and white footage of Roswell in a hangar that's very hard to make out what's going on there, but you can see a saucer in there. And what he said was this, and this is what's giving me a little bit of hope for this movie. This 79 years of terror campaign has to end. 79 years. I thought it was 80, but I guess they're being more precise about it. Since Roswell, since that crash, our government has been lying to us. And when they're not lying or they're trying to tell us something about this, they're trying to say that this is a threat to all of us on this planet and you should be scared to death. And in some cases, they're telling you that these are fallen angels, demons. They're describing themselves perfectly, but they're not, for me, describing this communion or this interaction we have with non-human intelligence, which is so far removed from the basic nuts and bolts. And I'm really hoping that I'm not muted. I don't think I am. That I wanted to talk about this today. There we are. Whitley wrote something that also caught my attention. And he made a comment in and on the channel that really caught my attention because it syncs very well with what I'm talking about. You know, without us, the world really has no future. We are a little spark deep in a dark heart. But we are here, and the spark becomes a great light, and the heart will start to beat again with the love of the world. Whitley Strieber. You know, it's amazing to me that there was absolutely not one comment, not one like. I don't think in a lot of cases people really knew what he was talking about. And I think a lot of times when I'm talking about how I feel about this experience, that they know what I'm talking about. And then there's Close Encounters. And in light of Close Encounters, the original film, many people I know haven't seen it in years and barely remember it. And I watch it every once in a while. And I'm here to tell you that film is rather perfect. It's perfect in giving us hope that what we're seeing, what we're dealing with is something that is not demons and devils, something much different from that. And I think that film expressed some hope for that very well. But speaking of Whitley Strieber, and I just read you that wonderful comment he made on our channel, I happen to have Whitley Strieber right here. Hello, Whitley.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, and at the moment,
You're getting dialed in?
You're lost. Where are you?
I'm here somewhere.
There you are. There we are. Okay.
There we are. Okay.
All right. Yes, here I am.
Indeed, you are.
Well, let me close my door. Everyone can see into my bedroom. I think there's a box of Kleenex you mustn't see.
Okay.
Anyway, here I am back again.
I just read your quote,
All right.
or actually, I read your comment you made in on the channel that I thought was beautiful. It was very poetic, which is
Okay. Sorry about that.
What, the poetry?
Okay.
You have a new camera again.
I can't hear you, Steve.
You have a new camera.
No idea. Not a sound.
Can everyone else hear me?
Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you quite clearly.
Make a sign of thumbs up like this if you can hear me. Okay. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. I can see my mic is working loud and clear, both of you. So the people.
I just asked. Yeah, they should.
Yeah, all the people in chat. I don't know if you have chat turned on, but they are hearing me.
And what?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. But he needs to be able to hear me so we can have a conversation.
All right.
Let's see here.
Could be wrong.
Private chat. Where's Whitley? No,
The mic is on.
yeah, I know it's on. Why? Okay, so there's 3 people. Why? Yeah, exactly. If only telepathy was easier. Why can't I? Boy, this is very frustrating.
If you open the YouTube stream on a different.
Okay. The problem is he's trying to talk to me, and it probably won't work. There we go.
Tell them. Okay, I'll come and go out.
Hey Siri, text Whitley Strieber.
What do you want to say?
Everyone can hear you and they can hear me. You can't hear me for some reason. That is probably a setting on your end.
Are there viewers out there? Are there viewers out there? Is this live?
Yes.
Good thumbs up.
Now, if anyone accuses us of using AI, boy, are you ever wrong.
Setting on my end. Okay, I'm just going to answer that question. Whitley, are they time travelers? It's an really interesting question. I wouldn't dismiss it for a minute. The question, though, is how would that actually work? Time travel. And the reason is this. There's something called the grandfather paradox, which you're all probably familiar with, at least to some extent. It means that you can't go back in time and do anything that will kill your own grandfather. And there are 2 periods of time that would be time and place that would be very hard to avoid the grandfather paradox. One would be in the proximity of anything that would cause change in the immediate present. And a few seconds before that, practically everything you do will. But then farther back, there comes a window when, depending on where you land in time, you will change less and less in the present time stream until finally you go back very far, and anything you do touching a single blade of grass is going to cause the time stream to change. And therefore, it won't be possible to change much. Now, the visitors, I asked them about this years ago, and they said, interestingly enough, that time is like the future is like a liquid, and it's very hard to tell what will happen next because it's so changeable, obviously. Like a liquid, it's never still. The present is like a line moving through that liquid, and the line freezes the liquid so that the past is like ice. But there are bubbles in the ice, and you can go into the bubbles in the ice and stitch together changes. Now, this is one of the reasons I think they may be time travelers, because otherwise, why would they know so much about that? And it's a quite simple, elegant explanation, and it's extraordinary, because they're basically saying there are places in the past that you can somehow find where the grandfather paradox doesn't apply for some reason. I don't know what that reason would be, but I bet you a physicist who was willing to entertain the idea of movement through time might be able to tell us that. So the answer is yes, it is a possibility. Now, here's another fascinating thing about it. If you wanted to defeat the grandfather paradox, if you're human beings in 3050 AD, and you want to go back in time and defeat the grandfather paradox, you would have to do that by creating something that did not exist at all in the past and sending it back. Then it might be quite free to make changes. That might be why they look like, oops, they look like that. Maybe that doesn't actually exist. Maybe it is a kind of a tool that enables the operators of whatever time machine or thing in the head there is to go back and function in time. Now, I want to add a little bit to this, and just enjoy this, because I always try to answer questions in 10 seconds and it takes me 45 minutes, but that's okay. You'll enjoy it, I think. This was before the communion experience. I had no idea of any of this. And I was going to the bank. It was a Saturday morning in March, or rather, I believe it was a rainy Saturday morning, in fact, about 9:30, or it must have been about 10, because the banks in those days opened at 10, and you couldn't, there were no cash machines. So you had to go into the bank and get cash. And I was going to go into the bank and get cash for the weekend. I was living on LaGuardia Place in Manhattan. Incidentally, there's a beautiful park there now, across the street from 520 LaGuardia Place, between Bleecker and West 3rd Streets. Go to that park sometime and look at the statue of Mayor LaGuardia. Then go around behind it and look down at the plaque of the people who created the park. On that plaque will be the name of a lot of very fancy socialites, and also Anne and Whitley Strieber. Because Anne Strieber decided to create the park. My name is only there because I was the husband. I said, you shouldn't even put my name on it. But she had all these fancy friends that I never got to see because I was too depressing. And so she said, "You're not going to wreck any more parties by explaining to people why the world is going to end. It's just too depressing." And so anyway, you'll see all these fancy names in Anne. Anne created that park. She said one day it was just a mud hole over there, and she said, "I'm going to make a park across the street." And I thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to be out there with a shovel." And I said, and she said, "It has nothing to do with you. You don't have to think about it." And the next thing I knew, she'd raised among her friends $2 million and got involved with the city. She selected the sculptor to sculpture Mayor LaGuardia. And now this park is gorgeous. Okay, so enjoy it if you go to Manhattan. Don't miss LaGuardia Place and LaGuardia Park. All right, now let's go back to 1983, to March of 1983. I'm walking across the street, and I'm at the corner now of Houston Street and LaGuardia Place. This Houston is a double street with cars going in both directions. And beyond that is what is now called West Broadway. Across from me is a fenced-in area and then two very large condominiums. I start the light, the don't walk light turns green, and I start to move across the street. Suddenly I hear in front of me creaking and sloshing noises. And not only that, I smell like something strong, a vinegary odor. And I think, what is going on? Because I didn't see anything. And I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, and I turn my head and I see coming into the street on my left, a gigantic wagon piled with barrels that are sloshing, and apparently they contain pickles because that's what they smell like. And a man sitting way up on top of this with a black apron and about 4 big dray horses pulling it. And I think, it's a parade. What's going on? I didn't know about this. And I turn back to see the rest of the parade, and I'm not in our time anymore. It's sometime sometime between 1870 and about 1895. I think it's in the late 1880s, because there's a canvas hose kind of thing in the gutter. And they were in the process of building a drainage system under the streets at that time. And I don't remember now, but I figured out probably pretty much what the time frame was. And a little woman who's about shoulder high, totally dressed in black, I knock into her and she goes skittering away. Then I hear a man's voice, but I ignore it because I see coming up West Broadway these people on horseback, and they're beautifully dressed. They're obviously equestrian people in a place where there are no horses anymore. And the air smells of coal. The sky is sort of orange. It's not now. I notice the man who's saying something. I turn and he's standing on the street corner. Now there are brownstones. There's no little park. There's no buildings. There are just these brownstones. And the man standing at the curb in front of them with a derby on, and he looks a little ominous, actually. And he's saying something to me. I can't hear him. And I turn back and I think to myself, I see a newspaper in the gutter. And I think to myself, I've gone back in time. I've gone back in time. And I was reading Albert Finney's book, Time and Again, then. And I thought, this is either a phenomenal hallucination because of Albert Finney's book, which is wonderful, by the way, Time and Again it's called, or I really am here. There was the newspaper there. I reached down to pick up the newspaper because I thought I would read it was just a scrap, but maybe there was a date or something on it. But when I moved toward it, a feeling like ice cold water went through the center of my body. And I experienced loneliness so intense that if I had stayed in that state for another 10 seconds, I think I would have been insane. It was not an emotion that we know at all, not at all. So there I was. I froze. I stood up and I just stood there. And gradually the world came back. And the don't walk sign was now flashing, which meant I had been in there between 30 and 40 seconds. And I turned around and ran home. And I was so scared that I would go into the house and it would be something else. But I went upstairs, everything was normal. And I told Anne the story. She listens and she says, okay, well, that's really cool. Did you get the money? I said, what money? She said, go out get the $50, come back, and you can finish your story. And so that's what I did. Years pass, and I tell this story from time to time. And someone says to me, do you know that Nikola Tesla's lab was really literally right across the street from where you were standing?
Wow.
And I look it up, and indeed it was. So I think maybe there's no record of Tesla ever having studied time travel when he was living in New York, but no one would make a record of that because that's the last thing that they would want to do. But never forget, the FBI confiscated all of Nikola Tesla's papers after he died, and we to this day do not know anything about them. So anyway, that I thought was amazing. Then I went back recently, and the garden is now grown up, and it's still fenced in. And you know what it's called? There's a little sign on it now it's called the Time Garden. And it's a garden that has been reserved to just grow wild in the middle of New York. And they decided to call it the Time Garden. It's a wonderful story. In what level is it true? Well, I'll tell you this. One of the things that makes it feel true is that I don't have any sense of it being real. And if it was real time travel, that sense of the reality of it would not be present actually in you. You would not be able to fix it and say, this is something I made up or this is true. It would be the principle of, the grandfather paradox would be preventing you from doing that. But one thing I'll never forget is the way it felt when I started to move toward that newspaper, because that was outside of the grandfather paradox. That coldness was the grandfather paradox, literally telling me, do not touch that because otherwise you're staying here. Anyway, Annie and I went up to the public library, the New York City Library on 42nd Street. Oh, and I had all kinds of weird time lapses. Like a couple of days later, I was at my office, which was on Madison and 44th. I was walking over to get lunch on, I was a young advertising guy at the time, and I didn't have much money. So I was getting lunch at a hot dog stand that stood in front of the library. And when I walked across the street, it was not a library. It was a big pyramid. And I thought, what the hell is that? Then I looked in an old book of old New York, and there used to be, before it was a library, there was a reservoir there, the bottom part of which looked like a pyramid. And that I saw that. In other words, I was still loosey-goosey in time a few days later. So short and long answer is, hell yeah, it could be time travelers. Why don't we, since I can't hear Steve, and it's the usual Dibbooks playing games, and we'll never figure it out. Because remember, Steve, I touched nothing, but when we started, I could hear you normally. Folks, give me another question. Ann Carter, you had a question. Can you repeat it? Because I can't see it now. I want to warn you, if you don't give me another question, I'll sing or start to spout poetry. Then you'll want desperately to give me another question. Steve's texting me. Okay.
Yeah, they can hear me just fine. And I've certainly had my own.
If you go out and come back in, it should work. Okay, let me do that. I will be right back.
Okay. And with my case, I know what Whitley's talking about. I was scared to death. I mean, I was in my shower, and it was in the 90s, and Jilly in the background was playing a song that I was listening to in the shower, and suddenly I found myself back in the 1960s in a shower downstairs in my mom's house. And I was really, it felt real. And I was paralyzed with fear because I thought if I do anything, I'd be trapped there. Same thing. And suddenly I whooshed back. Okay, Whitley. Well, I saw him come in. I see that he's in. Now, of course, it's Whitley's theory and somewhat mine as well that
There it is.
we're being played with. There, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We are being played with. There's no question about it because I didn't do anything, and neither did
No,
you.
I believe you. I've known you
Yeah.
for 34 years, and you've never lied to me. I was just describing my own time travel experience. I've talked to you about it, and I talked about how I was in the shower and Jilly was in the background. She's playing some Beatles music, and I'm listening to the song, and I close my eyes and just feeling the water rolling over me. And the next thing I know, I'm back in 1968 or 9 in my shower in my mom's house in the downstairs part of the house. And it completely freaked me out because it was so real. And I had the same feeling: touch nothing, do nothing, or you will be trapped. And then it's like I just slid back and I was back in the shower. And I literally had to stop the shower and get out and just, I shook. It was that.
What would that be like? What would it be like if you had stayed there? Because then there would be two of you, one old and one young. What would that, that wouldn't have worked. You probably would have blown up or something. I mean,
I don't know, or I would have gone off and somehow, knowing what I know about the future, made some quick money. And
yeah,
if you're going to be
right.
stuck there, it's like, you want to bet who's going to land on the moon first? I mean, and not to mention Google and IBM and everything else that was going to happen in the future. So one of the things that was in the topics to talk about on this show was this threat narrative. And one of the things that I noticed watching the latest trailer for Disclosure Day, Spielberg's movie, I watched it very, very closely. I was looking for any sign that this film would not be something that says that the visitors are threatening and basically telling people that they are what we are.
Well, listen, I just want to say I was with some people last night who've seen the film.
Yeah.
I was with, I'll tell you where I was. Kai Dickens, the creator of the telepathy tapes, has just finished her new documentary. And I was very kindly invited to view the final cut with her and the producers. Wow. And because I brought people together. And one person I asked, I said, can you talk about it? She said, well, not really. And I said, well, I understand that, but tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, scary is 10, like uplifting like Close Encounters is 1. She said 5. So
that's pretty darn accurate. You have not seen the most recent trailer?
Yes, I have. I saw the recent trailer just a little while ago.
Did you notice there is a podcaster and he says this 79 years of terror campaign has to end?
Yes, and that's very ambiguous, because does it mean terror on the part of the aliens, or does it mean terror on the part of the government, or both?
Or both. Based on
Dreamland this week is about General McCaslin's disappearance, and there's something real wrong there. And it doesn't. I don't think it has anything to do with the visitors, although his wife has said that maybe he was abducted. Because I don't want to get off on this subject too long, but right now they can't find a trace of him. They can't find any indication that he ever left the house. He's just gone. Remarkable. And I know the area he lived in. It's not far from Kirtland, and and there's a lot of weird juju out there around Kirtland. I was anyway, the area is got a lot of trees, or there's no place to hide. And if you're walking out of that house, you're going to be seen by someone's Ring camera. But so far they've gotten 700 people involved, and no one sees him on their Ring camera in the middle of the day. And he left with he had his wallet and a gun. He left everything that could track him behind and somehow just disappeared from the face of the earth. It's a really weird case and
It is.
scary. Well, what's scary about it is that the legacy program is known to be very dangerous when they get crossed, like David Grush said. And McCaslin, McCaslin, when in 2016, he corresponded with Tom DeLong. He seemed to be open to disclosure. And maybe he really was open to disclosure. If he had become a whistleblower, general, who had presumably would have probably seen the bodies, at the ones at Wright Pat if they're there, and the materials certainly, including the intact material, the intact saucer, which it was at Elgin Air Force Base years ago. I don't know where it is now, but probably still there because they don't move them very often because it's too ungainly to move them. Anyway, he knew all about that in all probability because of the place he was in, what his command was, because this would have been under his command. If he had decided to be a whistleblower, it would have been game over for the cover-up, because everyone's going to believe a general, especially if that general sits down in front of Congress and says, I personally observed the materials and I personally observed the bodies. So it could be that he knew that he was going to be in trouble, which is why he took his wallet and his gun and left everything else, everything that could track him behind, and just disappeared.
He's just gone into hiding. And of course,
Yeah.
The theories are he's been abducted or our own people got him, but it's probably what you're describing. He just ducked out. And you can
unless he
still do
decided
that.
to leave his life. People do that. They decide, I'm going to leave this life and live another life. And they walk out and they disappear. But the thing is, I know the area fairly well. And, by the way, it's got a lot of weirdness. I was about 25 miles from there, closer to Kirtland, and west of there, about a year and a half ago on a movie set with a friend who I was not doing anything. I was just watching him make the movie for fun. He invited me onto the set and onto the location, not bothering to tell me it was like 50 below or something. It can get damn cold out there in the winter, so I'm freezing my ass off. Anyway, when I got there, of course, there was all kinds of weird electronic interference on their mics and their intercoms and everything. Unmarked black helicopters kept flying over. They took pictures of the black helicopters. So there's big juju out there, unusual stuff related to Kirtland. Mm-hmm. So anything could be true. He could have been taken in to the mountain up there near Kirtland where all this stuff is supposed to be hidden.
Yeah.
Or he could have, he could be in hiding with anything. But anyway, where were we? God knows.
God knows. I was talking about close encounters earlier, I know some people that are very involved in this community, very involved in the research, very involved, knowledgeable of this whole field of interest. Yet they're all talking about disclosure and the day of disclosure. They're all very excited about it. Spielberg does such a great job on all this stuff. But then I asked them, when's the last time you saw Close Encounters? They get this sort of blank look and, oh, well, God, that was years ago. I barely remember it. And it's a lot. And when I go back and watch the film, Spielberg said he was naive. He also criticized the fact that Roy Neary, Richard Dreyfuss, was a bastard because he left his family over this whole thing. And people ran with it in the comments. You know how they are. They just ran with it. Yes, he's an asshole, and he's this, and he's that. And I'm like, wait a minute. I lived in that situation. Actually didn't know I was having these experiences.
Listen, your
Steve
feed
brought
is screwed up, Steve, badly. I can't hardly understand a word you're saying.
really with these
No.
figures.
Let me
But
do this. Let me answer the question that just came up. And also, there was a paying guest question a little earlier. I think I answered that one. And maybe your feed will get better because right now, now I'm all alone. I don't have Steve anymore. So now let's just go to town. Okay. Where did they start out negative and become positive? Interesting question, James, because the answer is complicated. They started out scared half to death of me and got used to me. And vice versa. That's more like it, I think, because when they took me, they had known me when I was a kid, and I'm not sure in the summer of 1985. I'm pretty sure there were certain signs, like I became incredibly paranoid. I bought guns. I was running around at night with a shotgun, driving my wife nuts. And she even had the sheriff talk to me to say to me that there hasn't been any crime in our area in 50 years, at least not in his entire time as a sheriff. And so he said, you don't have anything to worry about. You can leave the doors open when everybody does. But I was scared to death. I put it on an alarm system. I spent all one night putting in this alarm system, and I was aware, I had this fantasy that these little dark blue figures were coming up from the cellar in the night, which they were, as it turned out. Anyway, so I was scared. And they are very small. And when you really see one of the grays in total normal life, what you see is a small, kind of artificial looking creature that is really wary of you. And you feel immediately in your head that this little thing is in your mind. Therefore, it knows how scared you are, and it gets scared. When I was in that ship, anyway, I don't think they understood that I did not remember them. Because I don't know that they understand the human brain all that well, or I think things would be quite different. Yeah, I know Steve got kicked off of his own feed, but that's okay. I've done a few shows, and I can carry this for a while. We'll go to the top of the hour, or to the top of the hour, and hopefully Steve will get back. Otherwise, I've taken over his show, and I'm sorry. So the they're very fragile, and we're very big and very powerful. You could break one of those grays up into pieces in a second. Any one of us could. Any one it could. They're that small and fragile. And so they're scared, understandably so. They thought, I think, that the fact that I had seen them and been with them so often when I was a child, and I had no trouble with them then at all. I loved them. I really did. They did such cool things. It was just a lot of cool stuff when I was a child. But it was never talked about. My dad, what he really was and what he really knew, I will never know. He's long past us. And anyway, we don't want to talk anymore about Steve. So anyway, I did not remember a thing, because if it's not talked about when you're a child and no one talks about it, it's going to go right out of your head. That happened to our son, who had some of the most premier close encounters that ever happened to anybody. And he doesn't remember any now, because we thought it was healthier for us not to influence him. And so we didn't talk about it with him. It was a foolish mistake, but it wasn't a foolish mistake because we didn't understand that way that brain functions in those days. Now we do. And those memories are in him somewhere, but he can't access them. And I couldn't either in those days. So there was a lot of confusion. Didn't understand why I didn't respond to them in the summer. And then in October, they didn't understand. And finally, they just hauled off and dragged me out of the house. And that's where it began. Jeff Kripal, the professor who's my dear friend who I wrote Supernatural with, says that this was an initiatory experience. That is to say, a total overturning of your life, whether they knew it or not. And it was a total overturning of my life.
How come I can't hear him? God darn it.
Just roll with it, Steve.
Yeah, well, I'm, luckily I'm smarter than them, and I know my way around a computer better than almost anybody I know. So now I should be able to hear you quite well.
Can you?
Yes, I can. Now I can.
Okay, good.
Your volume.
All right. Now,
can you hear me clearly? Because
yeah,
I never
can
got
hear
to
you
finish what I was
fine.
saying.
I can hear you. We hear each other. You're breaking
Okay.
up again.
Oh,
there
great.
you go. Don't move around so much. It's overloading your processor.
I don't. Yes.
Okay,
These.
let's finish the question. So where I am with them now is we're sort of in love in a way. I mean, they come in here all the time. I have a wonderful time with them. They don't come in physically very often. I tried to get one of them to stay here for 2 weeks, and we went back and forth about it in the head a long time. Finally, this little gal shows up on the bedside, and she hardly even comes up to the side of the bed, and she looks up at me with her great big black eyes, and she's totally physical for that few seconds, and then she's gone. And I realize that's what I'm going to get. 30 seconds or less. But they abduct people who work with me. That's one thing for sure. And so they're still definitely around. I would not say they're not dangerous. I would not say that the relationship is particularly easy or easy to understand. It's not good guys, bad guys, an evolution like that from bad guys to good guys. It's a very complex relationship, and on both sides, it is in many ways deeply human. Deeply human. Not to say that they're human beings, but there is something about intelligent consciousness that has a kind of fundamental ground where we are all equal. And
Correct.
that's where I am now.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you.
And in Susan Alloway, who's here right now, and her experience with them, and we did a film where she talks about her experience. It's called The Jackrabbit Case. I know you've heard of it. There is this amazing moment where she's sitting on the table, and I started rushing to make sure I get it in before they cut me off. She asked to touch one of the grays, and it allows her to do that, and she recoils from it, going, ew, and it looked at her and said, why are you doing that? Or something along those lines. And because I am you and you are me, we are the same.
Yeah, that's the truth.
It is.
We are the same.
So where's the threat?
We have totally different ways of seeing the world. They do not see the world as we do. And they look at it in a different way. First of all, they have quadrispheric brains, which I go into deeply in the Fourth Mind.
That's true.
And they have a completely different sensory system. And a careful analysis can get you to the point where you've got some idea of how that sensory system works. And it does not work like this. They see different frequencies of light. They probably hear different things. They're fluently telepathic, but they don't have vocal cords, so they can't speak even if they want to. They don't have a syrinx, so they can't make any complex sounds. They can only make a kind of cry. And that cry is one of the most beautiful and at times terrifying sounds you'll ever hear, because they really do know how to use that what they do have of sound. But and because they are telepathic, people all dismiss them and say, "Oh, it's a hive mind." In other words, everyone's the same. No way. They are very different personalities, but they all have access to the same mind and to one mind, and as much access as they need. I don't think you have access to the whole mind at any given time, but they can gain access to loads of information in ways that we can't. In fact, Elon Musk is trying to stick implants into our heads so we can do the same thing. And I'll tell you, I don't want to do it. I want to be in here
No,
by myself, screwing around with my own head and enjoying my crazy. And I'm sure everyone else does too.
the
But they
visitors,
don't have that option.
they don't
It
they don't hide anything from each other. They can't. It's
They can't
everything is
exactly.
open.
But this means certain things. It means, one, they are very knowledgeable. They really are. They do know how things work. But two, they are very slow to make decisions because there has to be a kind of consensus built up, which can take years and years and years. And that's one of the reasons it's so slow them coming to us. So um, that's the reality of it, I think.
So,
Yeah, go
Whitley,
ahead.
well, looking at this all, and I remember the other day when I was reading Mr. Sparks' comment about, uh, I was listening to him when he spoke and said, being in front of the Greys is really hard because they don't hide anything from each other, and you can't hide anything from them. You can hide it from other human beings. They see your face, they don't get into your mind. And if they do,
Yeah.
well, then they're very specialized or they've learned how to get their abilities back. But either way, we hide things from each other, and we're very deceitful, and we lie and we manipulate. And if we were all telepathic, we wouldn't be able to do that anymore. And I wonder if this is why the visitors don't war among themselves and have all these conflicts that we as human beings have because we're deceitful, because we can hide from each other who we
Well,
really
there's
are
conflict
inside.
out there, all right. I don't know if whether I don't. I can't dimensionalize it though,
No.
but it's there. Uh,
Well,
I
it's the
met one
nature
of
of the universe. It's the nature of the universe, right? Yin, yang.
well, yin and yang. Yeah, I met
Yeah.
one of the Nordics, and he through a Defense Department intermediary, so he was definitely what he said he was, and you could tell anyway. It was obvious when although he was not real tall. And he, very sweet, spoke English, didn't have had a vocal cords and stuff. And he said to me, "You must never start a war with the Greys because they will never let you win, and they will never let you stop fighting." And I think to myself, it gets me back to General McCaslin because, of course, his area of the Air Force involved things like high energy laser weapons and high energy beam weapons. And if you go back to 1998, uh, there's a video that was analyzed by a physicist showing some little objects coming up near a space shuttle, which is moving over Pine Gap in Australia, and suddenly this beam comes up from below, and the little things scoot out of the way when the beam comes up. Now, that is an ultra extraordinary high energy beam weapon of some kind, because for that beam to remain coherent, coming all the way up through the atmosphere, that is something we on the surface people do not know anything about, but somewhere
Mhm.
deep inside, they do. So it could be that General McCaslin was at war with these people, with these Greys, and they might have taken it. His wife sort of jokingly suggested it in one of her very strangely cheerful posts about this. She doesn't sound like a distraught woman at all, although she may just be hiding it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we might be at war with them, but if they have any compassion at all, they're going to be at war with the Air Force and not the rest of us. And you notice
Well,
the Navy is much more forthcoming about this. The Air Force keeps its mouth shut because maybe they're involved in a forever war that they started and now can't end.
the Greys know your intent. They know my intent. They know most of our people who they deal with. They know our intent, and it's not to war with
Well,
them, not to
my
harm.
intent, I don't know about that. I don't think they know my intent. They're always surprised by me, and I piss them off enough. And you don't piss people off who already know what you're going
Yeah,
to do.
you're not going to pull out a revolver and shoot at them, though.
Probably not, but that's crossed my mind.
Probably not.
Probably not.
So what about Jake Barber? What about, and when I say Jake Barber, I'm talking about that moment of sadness and consciousness sharing with some form of consciousness coming from the object that he was transporting. When I saw him speak
love
about
Jake.
that,
We've spent a lot of time together.
I know you have.
Yeah.
Never
Okay.
underestimate me either.
Well,
but I know
anyway,
you have, and recently, and I would really like to know your take on that, because I'm a pretty good reader when it comes to reading someone's body language and facial expressions, and his world was rocked by that moment.
he was
Clearly.
rocked by it, all right. But Jake's a good guy. He's a good man. He's done a lot of hard things in the world. There's no question about that. I told those guys, all of them, that we're not talking to each other. We're not getting near each other until we figure out what happened to General McCaslin.
Right.
Because if that's the legacy program firing a shot across the bow,
yes,
it means that we all have to go to ground. I don't want those guys to spend time with me and then get into trouble because they did that, because I am not liked by aerospace security. They're scared to death of me. And
you and I talked about this last week, because everybody that I know in that category has been going dark on us, and
exactly.
Not because of any personal reasons with our relationship with them, but because there's something up.
Something's up. Yeah, that's right.
Very much
so.
so.
Anyway, I texted them all saying we're on the quietest for now. And anyway, but here's Jake, my impression of Jake and of that incident. First of all, I said to Jake, you were attacked then. That was a weapon. And it was not a bad weapon. It was a good weapon, because instead of hurting you, it turned you into a friend. And you found a way inside yourself to see this in a different light. And, it really did change the guy. And it's a wonderful thing, because, he's a beautiful man. And, he was doing what he was supposed to do. And
you can see it in his eyes.
And now the Skywatcher people, who are all hooked into this, are starting to talk about love and kindness and enjoyment. No, I'm serious. Don't.
No, I'm just laughing because it's a joyful laugh, and I know this is spreading. It
is spreading, and there's the Chris Bledsoe take on it, which is, I hope this beautiful lady that he talks about is in some way real, or at least usable. But this doesn't have to be horror show. But that said, it's hard when the Greys want to come into you and share your being. The process my wife understood from the very first, which she called communion. Mm-hmm. But you get used to it, and you realize eventually they're not taking anything from you. They're sharing, because your life experience cannot be taken. I'll tell you how this feels and what it's like. It's already 5:00. I said to myself, I'm going to do 1 hour and that's it. And so this will be the last thing. And
okay.
Okay.
And then I can tell you one thing before you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'm at the cabin. We're living there. I'm whining and kvetching and trying to get them to show up. Early one morning, they do that. They show up. They're just beyond the woods. It's a February morning, and I hear a sound like a horn or conch being blown, a very eerie sound that is an indication of their presence. So I throw on my robe and slippers and I go rushing outside. There's a little hill and then a little grove of trees, and then the clearing where the abduction took place is right there. I can see through the trees. I can see a dark shadow and some shadowy figure standing in front of it. And I realize it's them. It's real. They're here. I've been begging and pleading for them to come and show up, and they do. So I stop just at that point when I'm looking at them. Immediately, I hear in my head this voice, rough, hard voice. It sounds like the meanest cop or the toughest soldier you ever knew in your life say, "Come on, come on." And I thought, am I going down there to be eaten or to have a conversation? I don't know which now. And I've got a wife and son in that house. And maybe if I go down there, something's going to happen to them that I can't do anything about. I can't go down there because of the tone of voice, which of course they knew. They had no intention of having me go down there. That's not what it was about. So I turn around and I walk back to the house. The minute I put my hand on the doorknob, there are 3 cries from above the forest. The most complex, perfect, heartrendingly beautiful sounds I've ever heard in my life. They were so perfect that it was a year before I could even listen to Bach and Beethoven, my favorite music. It all sounded muddy because of
Mine too.
those cries. Yeah, you too. So I go back up into the bedroom. I'm sitting on the side of the bed, and I realize there's someone here. Because we were very sensitive to them being in the house, invisible by that time. They'd been there now for a couple of years. So the next thing I know, suddenly I'm not in the bedroom anymore. I'm somewhere else. I see these tall, elegant poles going up, and I'm kind of gliding. And I'm thinking, where am I? What is this? And then I look up and I recognize where the poles are leading. They're my mother's desk from her room when I was a baby. And what they have done is they have taken my adult consciousness and back to and drawn out of my own soul the moment I first walked. And it is the most beautiful, incredible experience you can imagine. It was wonderful. Then I'm back in the bedroom and I have got the message. You're still a baby, Whitley, but you've taken your first steps. Hello to the rest of your life. And here I am.
And ironically, the very thing I wanted to talk to you about before you depart was something that happened in meditation a few weeks ago. And I was deep in medication and I asked if anybody was there. And they said yes. And I could see them. And they took me back to my first day in first grade at Lafayette School, the school where I went. And the sole purpose of that, and I could see them or it looking at me like up here, wanting me to remember what it was like that first day I was in first grade and what it felt like to be among all those children and in that room. It wanted me to realize how different I was.
Uh,
And it wanted me to connect with it, but it did what you just described. It took my memory of being there and took me right back to it. It was real. It felt real. It wasn't like just remembering it. I was there. And that's the power that they have. And that's also the power we have.
yeah, absolutely. This is about, it's not about us versus them. This is about communion. Anne was right about that.
Yeah.
It's about getting into touch with each other and figuring out how to make this work. And it's not going to be easy. But, we're talking about what they have on offer, which really is a new world and a new way of being. And we have that for them too. It goes both ways, because their side of the relationship is going to be just as new and just as full of surprises to them as ours is to us. And that's what they want. They are here for the new. Back in 1977, two scientists, D.B.H. Kuiper, who discovered the Kuiper belt, he was a brilliant astronomer, and Mark Morris, a cosmologist, published an article in Science magazine in April of 1977, in which they theorized that if someone came here from another world, anyone who could get here, however they came, would have vast knowledge, no matter whether they came through time or whether they came from another planet or from another universe, whatever. They would have vast knowledge. The only thing they would want here is the new, innovation, things they didn't know. And that would mean two things. They would observe us very carefully, and they would not let us see them until they were sure that that would not cause us to completely redirect all of our attention toward them. And they would, in other words, they would not engage in cultural colonization, because if they did that, then we wouldn't innovate anymore. We'd be looking, what do they have? What have you got that we want, we can get? And that so it would be game over for them.
Yeah.
That's why they're high.
There are people here like you and I and many other on this channel that would be more interested in sharing consciousness with them than what we could get from them or how their spaceship works. I have very little interest in that. I have interest in existing in a higher vibration and in a shared consciousness that allows me to have.
I'm having a lot of fun being conscious, and I want to have more fun being conscious. And I think they can help that.
Yeah,
okay,
I do too. Thank you, Whitley.
Well, before I go, let's just sit together, put our attention on our bodies, and play a little game. We can raise our frequency, and the way we do that is we put our attention on our physical body, so we are feeling the sensation of your body, and just go ahead and feel how much we love each other, because we do. All of us do. And you can bring the grays in on it too. You can bring anyone in on it. Bring the trees in, bring the flowers in, bring the dogs, the cats, the snakes, the beetles, the creepy crawlies, and all of them in. Bring the world in. Bring it in. Yeah. This feels so good. I love you guys.
Love you too, Whitley.
Bye.
Thank you, Whitley.
Bye-bye. Well, that was a nice surprise. It was Mary's idea. I was chatting back and forth with him, and I was talking about the show I was going to do, I'm doing right now, and she said, "Yeah, I have Whitley on." I said, "Well, I'll ask him," and he showed right up. I really appreciate it. Wow. Well, this kind of went in all different directions from what I had originally planned, but that's sort of the beauty of it. I love the way Whitley closed it. He's very right about what he's saying, and that's my personal take on it. It doesn't have to be yours. I'm not saying it should be yours. We are not a cult, but it is how I feel. Before I close here, going back to Close Encounters and that whole notion that Roy Neary was bad for leaving his family. I have to say that when I was in the midst of this in the 90s and going to Yvonne, and Jilly found out that I had these experiences and I was going to Yvonne to have hypnosis to recall more of the memory, it completely freaked her out. It was so bad, she wanted to leave me. And If she had, she would have, and I would not have changed my course. You know, when your family leaves you, as Dreyfus's family clearly did in the film, I don't think it's fair to say that he made a bad choice. He had no choice, really. He did. But he was one of those people that's clearly pointed out in the beginning with his love of model trains and his kids and uh, watching Jiminy Cricket and everything else, that he was in touch with his inner child. And they spoke to him. They picked him. They picked all those people and they invited them to be part of this communion that Whitley talks about. And as it was said towards the end of the film, when the general said to the French scientist, Lacombe, that it's not psychic, it's coincidence. The map maker interpreted him and he said, they were invited. And that's who you and I are. All of us, we're invited. And that's very important. So I want to thank everyone for your contributions tonight. My goodness. And for all the great comments. And keep in mind that I don't think this is a threat. And if it is a threat, it's a threat to people who are worried about losing their control over you and you're being free of mind, free to choose. They will lose control over you, and that's a threat to them. So in closing, thank you again, and I'm going to sign off for now.